They called it a ruin, but ruins don't assign names. Salvage Report 4N, classified debrief. He shouldn't have survived the impact. The capsule's retros failed. Its trajectory drifted 10 degrees into the null sector, a patch of deep void where no ships mapped and no names remained. Kale remembered the static, the screaming metal, the sense of falling without atmosphere. And then, impact. Not disintegration, not fire. Landing. He awoke to darkness. Cold. Still. His lungs worked. His blood moved. His module was offline, but his ears heard humming. Not mechanical, not signal code. Something slower, as if the station itself was breathing. The chamber he lay in was unfamiliar. Curved walls, hexagonal architecture, dustless. Wrong. Somehow, not because it was old, but because it wasn't on any Dominion schema he'd ever studied. He blinked. The walls glowed slightly. No lights, just awareness. His fingers brushed the floor. It vibrated slightly, then adjusted, as if to recognize his touch. A symbol appeared on the far wall. Not projected, grown into the structure. Faint red lines curve into glyphs he couldn't read. But one word stood out, in high glyph, lost in the archives centuries ago. Relic-Class. Inheritor Designation. Kale / humankind code red. Kale sat up. The letters were moving, slowly pulsing, as if awaiting acknowledgement. "What is this place?" he whispered. No vocal response. But the humming shifted, became a pattern. Then a pulse of soft light formed behind him. He turned. A corridor had opened. At the end of it, stairs. Not tech lift. Stairs, as if meant to be climbed by hand, by flesh, by feet, not drones. He stood. Every movement echoed with strange softness, like the air around him was being recorded, not disturbed. The station felt not ancient, but attentive, and as he stepped toward the corridor, the red glyphs dimmed, and one new phrase appeared in their place. The blood has returned. If a place remembers you before you remember it, you are not a visitor. You are a revenant. Inheritance fragment, voxel archive, theta, Uro. Kale climbed the stairs. Each step vibrated slightly under his weight, as if measuring. There were no signs, no lights, but the architecture adjusted, curving slightly with each step, like the station was realigning around him. Not to guide, not to trap, to listen. At the top of the stairwell, a chamber opened. He stepped inside. It wasn't a command deck. No terminals, no control panels. Instead, a hall, curved, wide, the walls covered in faint mineral patterns, not etched but grown, like veins of crystalline memory. There were no readable symbols, only rhythm. Then the air changed, not in temperature, in resonance. The walls began to sing, not melody, not music, a low harmonic pulse, organic, layered, voices, dozens, soft, ancient, some cracked, some sharp like flint striking steel. And within the chorus, one voice stood out. It didn't come from any direction. It simply appeared behind his breath. And it said, "Kale." He froze, not because it used his name, but because it used it differently, as if speaking to him was not the point. The voice used his name the way someone might wrap a relic in cloth, delicately, as if it had already been shattered once. Then the phrase repeated, "Kale has returned. Kale still breathes. Kale has not forgotten." He stumbled back. "What is this?" he whispered. "What is this place?" The walls replied, not in answer, but in tone. The harmony shifted upward, as if acknowledging pain, but offering continuation instead of clarity. He turned slowly. At the far end of the chamber, a segment of wall receded. Stone folded into itself, revealing a smaller room, unlit, no sound. He stepped forward. It was cold inside, and there, standing in stillness, was a figure, human-shaped, encased in heavy armor, ancient, symbiotic, covered in layers of rust and time-preserved dust. Its helmet was down, hands crossed over its chest. But it was not a statue. It was a body, held not in death, but in suspension. A stasis field glimmered faintly at its core, and in its hands, a thin metal plate. On it one phrase. The first returned. Kale's chest tightened. His breath shook. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't drift. He wasn't the first to find this place. He was the first to wake it. He stepped closer to the figure. The armor bore a symbol near the collar, a curved mark, cut into the plating like a scar across steel. He didn't know what it meant, but it stirred something in him, a shape he'd sketched as a child, on paper, on windows, in dust. He reached for the plate. His hand hovered, trembled. Then the voice returned, gentler this time. Kale, remember. Not a command, an invitation. He touched the plate. The stasis field broke. The figure did not collapse. It remained upright, but light bled from the helmet's seams. Not white, not red, memory-colored. The song returned, quieter now, one voice only. The same voice from the wall, repeating 3 words. You are home. Kale fell to one knee and whispered, without knowing why. I never left. When a place begins to dream of you, ask not why it knows your name, but why you forgot it. Codex of the Unmarked Pilgrim, Entry 11. The chamber held its breath. Kale stood before the armored figure, the phrase still glowing in its hands. The first returned, but the figure didn't move again. No reanimation, no spoken command, no warning. And yet the room began to change. The air thickened, not with dust or heat, but with presence. The walls flickered, shedding layers of what Kale had thought was corrosion. Beneath the grime, lines pulsed. Circuits? Vessels? No. Memory paths. Light traced them like veins, bleeding outward from the relic's stasis field. And the station, or whatever will govern it, opened the first archive. Not on screen, not in text, but in experience. Kale blinked, and the world shifted. He wasn't in the chamber anymore. Or he was, but it had changed shape. His body moved forward of its own accord. He did not feel possessed. He felt invited. He walked through a narrow corridor, walls high, carved of obsidian and gold leaf, inlaid with what looked like scar glyphs. The same curve he'd seen etched into the first return's armor. His fingers brushed the walls. They felt warm, familiar. His pulse aligned with the glow. Each step hummed in time with his heart. At the far end of the corridor, a doorway stood open. Not mechanical, ritualistic, as though meant to be crossed with intent, not utility. He entered. Inside a room, circular, half-lit, figures stood in a loose formation. 7 in total, tall, clad in armor, the same style as the suspended figure. Their helmets off, but their faces blurred, unfinished, like memory refused to sculpt them in full. All except one, a man, his face weathered, but his eyes sharp. He looked directly at Kale and smiled. You came late again, he said with warmth. Always last through the veil. Kale opened his mouth, but no words came. He wasn't controlling this conversation. He was inhabiting it. The man stepped forward, put a hand on Kale's shoulder. Don't worry. We waited. Another figure laughed softly in the background. He was probably dreaming again. About the scar, someone added. Always the same shape. They said it like a joke, but it wasn't a joke. It was a pattern. Something Kale had drawn his entire life, without knowing why. The man nodded toward the center of the room. We'll leave the echo if we don't return. You know the rules. And if the silence keeps it longer than it should, he added with a dry smile, then maybe someone will hear it in a song someday. Kale's breath caught. That sentence. He had written it. On a childhood desk. In a dream journal. Before he'd ever left his birth world. Maybe someone will hear it in a song someday. He had thought it poetry, but it was a memory, seeded before he was born. The man tightened his grip. If we don't make it, follow the scar. And if we do, he smiled wider now, then we'll meet you where the veil breaks. The vision dissolved. Kale stumbled backward. He was back in the chamber, sweating. The relic figure still stood unmoved. But now the walls sang again. Not with voices, but with tone. A chord, stretched and low, like the beginning of something too large for the throat. He stepped forward, placed a hand to the wall. Another vision opened. This time, a battlefield. Dark sky, burned ground, silhouettes of giant biomechanical walkers collapsing in flame. He was inside a mech, or part of it. His hands gripped controls, not levers but strands of energy. Someone behind him shouted, "We're breaking. Reforger 5 is down." And then, Kale, pull the field. Reset the lattice. He obeyed, not because he understood, because his hands remembered. The mech surged forward, tore through a wall of fire. The sky above cracked, and the memory ended. Back in the chamber, Kale fell to his knees. He had not lived that life, but his body had. Somehow, somewhere, a voice whispered again, gentle and from no direction. "You remember in pieces, because we left him that way." He rose, heart pounding. This was not knowledge. This was preparation. He was being restored, not as a person, as a link. And on the far wall of the chamber, a new phrase emerged, drawn not in ink or plasma, but in light folded through gravity. "If this fails, let the relic choose the one who dreams in scar patterns." Kale touched the words and whispered, "I dreamed of it before I was born." The wall replied, "Then you were never meant to forget." Truth has no format. It reveals itself only when your memory stops defending the lie. Relic Station Directive 1A. Kale stood before the wall that had spoken. The phrase still glowed softly, etched in braided streams of light. Let the relic choose the one who dreams in scar patterns. He had never chosen this place, but it had chosen him. And now, the station responded as if relieved to be remembered. A soft chime rang through the chamber. The hum of the walls deepened. The temperature dropped slightly, not from malfunction, but from alignment. Kale felt a pull, subtle but real, toward a hallway that had not existed moments ago. The architecture of the station was reshaping, not building, but unfolding, as if it had always been there, waiting for the right presence to trigger it. He followed. The new corridor curved inward like a spiral shell. Its walls were smooth and dark, pulsing with heat, not light. No screens, no displays. But as Kale walked, memories began to happen around him. Not memories he recalled, memories that recalled him. The first opened like a curtain drawn aside. A barren world, low gravity, broken towers scattered like teeth across the landscape. A battle had taken place here, but there were no corpses, only holes in the ground, perfectly circular. And in the center, a black flag, no emblem, only a single phrase carved into the pole. We were erased, not defeated. Kale moved forward. The memory shifted. A new world, richer, golden skies, twin moons. A hall filled with diplomats, hundreds of species, colors and textures unimaginable. They sat silent, watching a single human kneel on the platform before them. He was unarmed, scarred. His voice rang clear. "We do not come to beg for recognition. We come to return what you buried in silence." And then his image fractured, like it had been deleted halfway through his sentence. Only the echo of his last words remained. "What you buried in silence." The corridor changed again. A final memory emerged. Darker, underground, a vault packed with machinery and biotech sealed in glass. Kale walked between the containers. In each, a person, human, unmoving, suspended in time. And beside them, a console pulsed. A voice, genderless and rough with age, spoke from nowhere and everywhere. They did not fight to conquer. They fought to be remembered correctly. Kale stopped. This was an archive. This was confession. The corridor wasn't showing him what had happened. It was showing him what had been removed. He reached the end. There stood a final door, black, seamless, but vibrating with that same quiet pulse of memory. He placed his hand on it. The door recognized him. Not his print, his memory. It opened. The chamber beyond was circular. At the center, the core of the station. But it wasn't a computer. It was a sphere of woven light and metal, held in suspension. Inside the sphere, a spiral. The same shape he'd drawn as child. Only now he understood. It was not a decoration. It was a map, a coil of historical memory, compressed into a songless frequency, waiting to be decoded, not by machines but by the living. Kale stepped closer. The core flared briefly. His wrist module fried, shorting out in a cascade of static. He tore it off. Didn't need it anymore. The station didn't need translation. It spoke now. A voice emerged, one he had heard in dreams, in silence, in the fold between seconds. It spoke not to him, but as him. They called us lost. They called us dangerous. They removed our names from the star maps, our shapes from the treaties, our songs from the shared archives. But we remained, because truth cannot be deleted, only buried. The core spun faster. Images flooded the room, not as projections, but as presence. A world being burned from orbit, not with rage, but with procedure. A tribunal erasing a file labeled Anthroset Memory Chain 9. A council voting on an excision event, code-marked humanity, status, mythify. Kale fell to his knees. His hands trembled. Because this wasn't history. This was exile rewritten as absence. Not just destruction, not even suppression. It was intentional forgetting. And the core said, we were not feared for war. We were feared for pattern. We remembered too quickly. We adapted too precisely. We forgave too deeply. And so they said we were dangerous. Kale stood slowly. Why show me this now? The core pulsed, then replied, because you still dream in the old symbols, and you still wake with your name intact. That is enough. A terminal rose from a floor. It held only one prompt. Do you wish to reactivate the relic? Rewrite status. Observed acknowledged. Kale reached forward, hovered over the panel. His finger trembled. He whispered to the room, I'm not ready. The room replied, then let truth wait with you. And for the first time, the station's hum changed. Not into sound, into a feeling. One word, not spoken, not written, but understood. Home. Some inherit the crown. Others inherit the burden of remembering who wore it last. Testament remnant, unaligned archive. The prompt still pulsed. Do you wish to reactivate the relic? Rewrite status. Observed acknowledged. Kale stared. His hand hovered over the panel. Every part of him screamed caution. Not fear of danger, but fear of recognition. Because deep down, something in him already knew. This wasn't about systems. It was about him. He pressed his palm to the panel. No light, no surge, just stillness. For a moment, it felt like nothing had happened. Then the hum changed. Again, subtler this time, less a frequency and more a pull inward. As if the chamber had just exhaled through his memory. He staggered, fell to one knee, and the room collapsed. Not physically, cognitively. The floor vanished. The walls dimmed. And Kale's vision flooded with not light. Sensation painted across perception. He didn't see through his eyes. He saw through memory. Not just his. The first vision was blurry. A corridor, dim, filled with alarms and pale green emergency lights. He stumbled forward, but it wasn't his body. The arms were thicker, the breath heavier. He looked into a reflective panel as he passed. A different face. Not Kale's. Older, marked by war and radiation. Eyes burnt gold. He knew the man held something. A capsule. Small. Circular. Alive. Inside a hum. No voice. But potential. The man whispered to it. You will carry what I can't. You will remember what they won't allow me to speak. And you won't know it until the silence breaks. Kale gasped. The vision shattered. Another rose. Now, the man stood in front of the relic. The very same sphere Kale had touched. Around him, 6 others, clad in armor, faded insignias, identical to the first returned. One of them asked, Are you sure? He nodded. Truth survives longer when it's forgotten. Another laughed bitterly. And when the new host wakes, he'll know what he needs, the man said. and only what he needs. He turned to the relic, took a deep breath, then added, and if he finds the scar again, he'll know who he was born from. Cale felt his hands shaking, but in the vision, the man smiled. Not with pride, with surrender, as one who chooses memory exile, not death. The final vision came quietly. A child, sitting in a steel room, drawing spirals on the wall with his finger, humming a song that had no origin. Behind him, two voices whispered, "It worked. How do you know?" "He's drawing it." Cale recognized the spiral, the same one he had etched into the fog of windows as a child. The same shape the station carved into the air when it accepted him. The memory folded inward, back into darkness. And Cale, now fully aware, lay curled at the base of the core, tears on his face, mouth dry, heart silent, because now he knew. He was not just Cale. He was a vessel, not a clone, not a copy, a continuation. His thoughts, his dreams, his fears, they were his, but seeded with another silence. Someone who had chosen to be erased, so he could awaken in a future where the truth could finally surface again. He sat up slowly. The chamber was dim now, not asleep, just waiting. A panel extended from the floor. No command prompt, just one display. Inheritor memory synced complete. Primary function restored. And beneath it, a message, not digital, etched in metal, as if left behind long before his arrival. He read it and wept. "If you're reading this, then I chose right. You survived." When one remembers for many, the remembering becomes its own form of survival. Whispered fragment, edge of the echo scar. The message still shimmered beneath Cale's fingers. "If you're reading this, then I chose right. You survived." He read it once, then again. The third time, he didn't read. He just let the words stay. Inside, around him, the relic station dimmed. Not as if shutting down, but as if content. Its walls no longer pulsed with urgency. The song faded to a breath. The chamber returned to stillness, like a heartbeat slowing into rest. Cale rose. He didn't feel lighter, but he felt anchored, and that was more. As he exited the chamber, the door closed behind him. No sound, no final hum. It didn't need to mark his leaving. He had already brought it with him. The corridors had changed. Where once the walls reflected nothing, now they shimmered faintly with symbols. Some he recognized, some he had drawn as a child in dust, never knowing what they meant. They weren't guiding him. They were welcoming him. He reached the outer gate. It opened before he touched it. Outside, starlight, windless void. The station's shell opened like a sigh, and Cale stepped onto the platform. No ships, no rescue, only him, and the echo that now lived inside his memory. He looked out over the broken space beyond, his breath steady, his name intact, his purpose returned. And then, from deep within the station, a voice, the same voice that had once said, "You will carry what I can't," now whispered, "You are no longer the last of anything. You are the first to remember again." Cale looked at the sky and whispered back, "Then let me remember loud enough for all of them." A beacon ignited at the base of the station. Not a signal flare, not an emergency code, just a songline, a frequency once forbidden, now reborn. Encoded in it, the scar symbol, the dream spiral, the first human words sung into silence. And one new designation. Cale, Relic Inheritor / Memory Anchor 01. Far across the stars, in a place where old systems still listen without knowing why. A receiver blinked, and the song began again. Subscribe to HFY Chronicles. Continue the journey in the full playlist, Chronicles of the Lost.